So we did Nashville BNA history and current facts. Let's go. Oh, there we go.
So in the beginning, Nashville had airports, but it didn't have any major airports. It had Hampton Field, which went till about 1921, and then Blackwood Field, which went about 7 years from 21 to 28. And then from then on, they got the Sky Harbor Airport. That was like their final big one before they built the new Berryfield Airport. So they went through those three. Business started picking up. American Airlines, Eastern Airlines. They started doing a lot of their business through there, and they were flying out of the Sky Harbor Airport, which was in Rutherford County, but it didn't have enough space to cover what they needed. So they decided to find an area, and it took a few months, and they found 4 farms, and there was 300 acres, and they decided to build what would now be Berryfield Airport. You can switch to the next one. So Berryfield, it had 3 large runways, a 3-story terminal, a private control tower, and 2 hangars that were available. And in the building for it, part of the second New Deal that came out was this Works Progress Administration, which pretty much helped fund and provide workers for all the building service projects, the social service projects, such as building this airport, building roads, building school systems, area, stuff like that. And Harry S. Berry was the administrator from Tennessee for the Works Progress Administration, so they named it after him. The original Berryfield Airport had no security checkpoints. It was, I mean, you could walk straight onto the tarmac, straight up to the plane, and they would even give tours to some people who weren't even coming on the planes. But the total cost of this new airport was 1.2 million, which because of inflation is a little more than 24 million today. In the first year, 180,000 people were served, and as we have on there, Colonel Harry S. Berry twice. But I guess that's because he's important. Harry S. Berry he's my favorite, and his name sounds cool. All right, you can go to the next one.
That's just another picture. So when World War II began, the military actually took over Berryfield and used it as a base of forward operations and for the Fourth Fairing Command, and it was actually expanded almost 5 times its size, and it was 1,500 acres, which previously it was 340 acres, so it was a huge expansion. And then after the war, when the military didn't need Berryfield anymore, it was given back to the citizens and for transport usage. And so with some of the expansions, in 1958, they made plans for a new terminal and they started construction on it. 1961, it was opened and it was around 45,000 or close to 46,000 square feet, and included a control tower with state-of-the-art electronics. And then 1963, work began on runways and with expansion of 800 feet on one runway and started another one. In 1970, the Metropolitan Nashville Airport Authority was created, and it led construction, operation, and management of the airport. And just in 1970, new plans began based on long-term growth. New terminals were built alongside construction of a new runway to decrease the time between takeoffs and landings, just to make it more efficient. And Berryfield Airport stood at around 3,300 acres, which is more than double than the military expanded it.
So by this time in the 1970s, the airport was like expanding a lot in the 70s and 80s. So American Airlines was looking for a new airport to base their traffic hub, and American Airlines works out of other areas like Chicago, Indianapolis, like big cities, and they were looking for their new traffic hub, and they announced that it would be in Nashville, and they announced that this Berryfield Airport was going to be the Nashville hub. And so they hired a man. His name was Robert Lamb Hart, and he decided to build another big terminal. And it took 3 years to build. It was the biggest terminal they had. It was finally completed in 1987. It had an international wing in Concourse A, and it had like a 3-story atrium. So it was pretty big. All right, you can go to the next one. So at this point, the international wing in Concourse A and the almost, what was it, 10 times the expansion in land size and acres. And so the airport needed a new name. And it was always Berry Field, but it was in Nashville. So the obvious name change was the Nashville International Airport. It had an international wing. It was in Nashville. It's easy, but the code is still BNA for Berry Field, Nashville. So that's what if you're looking for weather, for maps, charts, anything, it's always BNA. And many military facilities, it's still used as the Tennessee Army National Guard base, and so many military facilities still refer to it as Berry Field. But yeah, you can go to the next one.
So some growth and loss with the newly named Nashville Airport. It was booming with business, and so not only it was a hub for American Airlines, but a flight directly to London was now being offered alongside nonstop flights all over the country. And according to departedflights.com, American Airlines led over 250 departures to almost 80 different cities in 1993. However, though, the airport still operated at a loss when American Airlines closed down their hub, which led to a decline in the business. And that's just some of the terminals. And so some current facts. As the 21st century came around, business picked back up and Southwest began to dominate the airport. To this day, a majority of the Nashville Airport is led by Southwest. The Land West runway 2 left, where the new terminal was built in 1961, now has house and Invader Regional Support Facility. In addition to Flair Airlines, which actually provides nonstop international travel from BNA to Edmonton and Toronto.
Terminal upgrades recently, or I guess in the big picture recently, in the 2000s, in this century, they decided to even further renovate everything. And the main renovations, they decided it would be in two major phases. And the first phase updated all the food services, the vendor services, basically just like comfort services, like for all the people walking through the terminals and through all the concourses. It would be nice to see a fancy restaurant rather than something run down. And they also updated their flight information systems. And a new security checkpoint was constructed at the head of every terminal. Phase 2 is pretty similar. They pretty much just upgraded and modernized the bathrooms and ticketing areas, check-in areas. If you go to the major airports, you can go to the little machines and get your check-in ticket, your boarding passes and all that. And at this point, the terminal building was over 1 million square feet. So it has majorly grown. And there's big talk of building a hotel and a parking garage. I think the hotel is like right in the center. Do we have a picture of it on the next slide?
Yeah, it's on the next one. Let me go to it.
Yeah. So there they have the future hotel and garage, like right in the center of the airport. So Concourse A over on the right, that's the international wing. And then I couldn't imagine trying to stay in a hotel at an airport. I've heard of people like sleeping in airports, but that'd be interesting.
I heard it's mostly for like when flights get canceled or delayed. It's more for like convenience, and
that's probably smart because then they don't have to pay for people to get out to hotels or give refunds and everything.
Yeah, and they can just they don't have to miss flights or whatever, all that stuff. But yep.
And this renovated terminal, it was named, I think it was the Robert C.H. Matthews Jr. terminal. That's a long name. It was named after him because he was the MNA board chair from 2011 when they did everything. Okay, you can go to the next one.
I think that's it.
Yeah. So is it? Yeah. And so at this point, it's big. They have they're doing some extra work right now. They're rebuilding some of runway 2 left. 2 left, 20 right. That was the newest one, completed in 2010. And they also had, around that time, they had runway 2 center and 20 center was closed. But they got 91 total acres of tarmac that are being rehabilitated and being funded. A lot of this was funded by the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. That's what gave a lot of money. So between that and the New Deal Works Progress Administration early on, there's been a lot of government help with the Nashville airport, or then Berryfield, but yeah.
I heard like one thing I read about taxiway S is damaged or like its like weight factor was being a reason. So now they're like trying to find different like materials to either rebuild it completely or to like layer onto it and to reinforce it and all that stuff.
Yeah, they're doing a lot. Well, recently, like in the past couple years, I think it was 2017 or 2018, British Airways announced that they're bringing back nonstop service between Nashville and London because they had stopped it in 1995 when Americans stopped being so big at the airport. But so now Nashville does have a constant flight to London. I think they're still doing that. I think that's still active.
I mean that makes sense of it since it's being like flights are being picked back up.
Yeah, I wish we could ask questions, but we're on Zoom, so nobody's here to ask any questions. But yeah, that's the history of the Nashville Airport. It's good. It's good to know about the airport that we're close to, or I guess the most major airport that we're close to.
Yeah, without a doubt, it's huge. Whenever I like flew there, like for my flight lab, I didn't really get to see it well at night, but like I think we landed on runway 2 left, and after like when we were taxiing back to the runway, there this huge. I think it was or I think it was a 737 that landed like right behind us or right after us. And it was
What were you in? Were you in the diamonds? You
we're,
get eaten by that.
we're literally just bumping around. It was hilarious. We had to wait though because like their wind shear or like the wingtip vortices.
Yeah.
But that's it. Let me stop recording.